Welcome to another episode of I Screwed Up and Please Don't Do What I Did. That's kind of what I'm calling these Wednesday episodes of where I share business lessons over the last 16 years of being an entrepreneur, some of the mistakes that I've made, and hopefully you will not have to make those mistakes. A smart man will try things, fail, learn from his lessons, and not do them again. A stupid guy will just try, fail, and keep failing and never learn the lessons. A genius will learn from other people's mistakes. And that's what I'm asking you to do every week, is to be a genius. Take the mess ups, the screw ups that I had, and don't do them. Learn from them.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. Today's lesson. I feel like a teacher. Okay, students, gather around. Let me tell you today's lesson. Well, today's lesson surrounds a few years ago. A buddy of mine came to me and needed help setting up an organization, and it was a brand new company, and he didn't have the expertise that he needed to for one part of it, needed me to come on board to help him. I said, okay, I've got some time in my schedule. My other businesses were running fairly well. I didn't need 100% of my time, so I had some free time. And I said, okay, what's the deal look like? He goes, well, I don't want any money from you. We're going out. Money's not important. But I'll give you 10% of a deal to just come on and make this thing work. And I'll give you a salary. I think the salary was $150 or something a year. No big deal, but I was interested in the equity piece because I knew what this organization could turn into. Fast forward a few months. We're working this thing. We're working really hard at this. And then I would say about 3 months into the deal, he came to me and said, look, we're bringing in outside investors and we're doing some other things. And, I think we're going to have to give up some more equity, and I can only offer you 5% instead of the 10. And I remember that moment, and I said, man, this is not good. I don't go back on my deals. Even if things change, I never go back on a deal. And I remember looking at him and saying, yeah, he's a buddy of mine. He's a good guy. I was really torn. One, I was ticked off because I knew what that additional 5% could mean in a few years. But it was the fact that he was changing the deal that really, really got to me. And I had a couple choices. I could walk away then, or I could see it through and just finish it. And I decided that I had enough time invested, that I was going to see it through. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that where you feel like, okay, I've put in the time. Let me just see it through. This is not the way I had planned it. But if I turn away now, I walk away with zero. So I decided to move forward. And here's what happened. We set up the company, raised the capital, brought in the employees, got the infrastructure going, started making sales. The company continued to grow. And about 18 months into it, after we started operations, it's something that I was not going to stay in for a long term. It's just I was there to get it started. So I tendered my resignation. I kept my stock. And at that point, I had the ability to exit my stock at the valuation that was currently on the books, or I could wait and exit at a later time. And I said to him, look, do you really want me going forward with the organization from a shareholder perspective? The valuation's not worth that much right now, or, do you want me to just hang out and cash out later? And he said, no, stay in. And at the time, my shares were worth about $1 million. He's like, no, stay in, let this thing grow. Go for the ride. I'm like, cool. I don't need the money. Let's go do it. And in the operating agreement, it stated that I had the ability to do that as long as he agreed. But there was also a clause in there that I didn't pay much attention to. And that clause was, at any time in the future, if he was the majority shareholder, wanted to buy me out, he had the right to do that at the current valuation that was determined by 3 professional valuators. One I chose, one he chose. I'm sorry, 2. One I chose, one he chose, and then the average of those 2 would become the valuation. So I'm like, look, he's a buddy of mine. He's a good guy. He's saying, hey, hang out, go for the long term, hit the big win with us. So I'm like, cool. Well, about 2.5 years later, I get a notice from an attorney saying that they're buying my shares out. And when you guess it, okay, it was exactly on target with our forecast of what would be the lowest valuation of that company as a result of bringing all the capital on up front, having the expenses, go out, and as you're building it back up. So at the very lowest valuation possible, he decides to take me out. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Here you are, 2 years later or earlier, stood in front of me and said, no, come along for the ride. Part of this is what we've created as a team. We're both the co-founders. Let's just do this thing and hit the ball out of the park. And I bought that. But that wasn't the case. The case was he wanted to get me out at the lowest valuation possible. So the lesson here is when things don't seem like the way they should be, and you start to see some integrity or some ethical issues start to raise their heads, there might be something going on here. Document. Have this stuff looked over by an attorney very carefully. But at the end of the day, you may find others not living up to the standards that you might. I would have loved to have gone for the ride on this deal. They're doing close to $30 million now, have a valuation of $30 to $50 million. And my 10% or 5% even would be worth a couple $1 million. So the lesson learned here is if you want out of a deal, that's great. There should be some triggers of when you can get out. But if someone else can force you out, they might just force you out at a period where it's not worth a lot, or certainly not worth what it should be. If you're finding these tips and these lessons valuable, you can also head on over to our Facebook group, Peak Performance Nation. And on Fridays, we have a little ritual that we have that is Failure Fridays, where the members of the group share their failures in business and what they've learned from them so you don't have to repeat those same lessons. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.